What's up, everybody? Welcome. We're back. I'm super excited for this show. Welcome back to Common Sense, the podcast. And please give a warm welcome to our guest, Scott Phillips. What's up, my man?
Not much, bro. How you doing?
I'm good, man.
Good.
I'm really glad to finally get to meet you. Like we were talking about earlier, I feel like I've known you half of my life because of all the Wiley people I know. And you are like Mr. Wiley. You're the Wiley legend.
Hey, man, I'm proud to have grown up in Wiley. I feel blessed to have grown up there when I did, particularly. I say it all the time, man. Like it was the golden era of Wiley, you know.
Yeah.
And, the 80s, man. The 80s were the golden era of everywhere.
It's like you and Brian Bosworth, from what I hear. Like that's it.
Yeah, I knew that would come up. Yeah, man. No, we had a great time, man. I was blessed. Wiley was much smaller back then, and you know, man, it was a great place and a great time to grow up.
That's awesome, man. Well, you don't need a whole lot of introduction, but for any of you that tuned in and do not know who Scott Phillips is, we're gonna let him tell a little bit about his story. But he is a former Navy SEAL. He is a former college athlete. He's a minister of sorts. With the motorcycle. He's at a big motorcycle club he's a big part of. What am I forgetting here? And then he's got his Invincible Academy where he teaches jiu-jitsu to everybody out in Wiley. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your background and just kind of start us from the beginning a little bit here.
All right, man. So, you know, hey, thanks for having me, number one.
Absolutely, man. I'm super excited. I've been working on this for a while. You're probably the most requested guest out of a year of doing this.
Awesome.
Like, people just hit me up and they're like, you got to get Scott Phillips on. You got to get Scott Phillips on. I'm like, all right, let's do it.
That's cool. Well, hey, thank you for requesting me it's cool to be here.
Yeah.
Man, so I moved to Wiley when I was 10 years old. Moved there in 5th grade.
Okay.
Came from Wills Point. My family had been in Wills Point, and man, I was blessed. Like I say, it was a great time to move there. A little bit of trivia, you know, like man, I don't know if you heard the whole Wiley axe murder, you know, like the whole
I've heard this
death in a small town. Like the lady that was killed was supposed to be my 5th grade teacher. So that summer, while we were moving to Wiley, that all happened, and so. Yeah, kind of an infamous time to move there. But anyway, we had family there, and, you know, so we got there. And, man, I grew up there, played ball, played football, basketball, did everything.
The legendary Coach Schaefer.
Man, played under Coach Schaefer, yeah, and a bunch of other great coaches, man. I mean, Schaefer was, obviously he was the head coach, but, again, that time frame, man, we had – you know, Coach Schaefer, Coach Ard, Coach Terry, Coach Wilbanks, my linebacker coach, Coach Spann, Coach Peters, Coach Mazan, Coach Gent, like all these great dudes, Coach Hall, I don't think I'm missing anybody, Coach Dorsey, man. Coach Dorsey, matter of fact, Coach Dorsey probably, whether he knew it or not, had some influence on me becoming, you know, a biker and in a motorcycle club. But great coaching staff, you know, and so many of them were godly men that really influenced a lot of us, not just me, but a lot of guys. So played football with some great guys, man. We had great teams. And
yeah, I heard you could like single-handedly destroy an offense pretty much.
Man.
I mean, at least that's the story I was told.
I'll go with it. I mean, I'm not going to fight you over it. I'm not going to argue with you, right? But I loved the game, man, and God blessed me with some ability and some drive and desire, and He blessed me. I'll tell you, He blessed me with an uncle who's the only reason really I played football. My Uncle Donnie, started when he was a big-time Garland Owl, and he was a middle linebacker, number 60, and obviously he was older than me. I never got to watch him play, but I heard all the stories, and really when I started playing football in 5th grade, man, Little League, he was the only reason, like, I was a basketball player. I'd rather play basketball. My other Uncle Ray was a big basketball player. We played together, and he lived with me for a while. Anyway, my Uncle Donnie is the reason I started playing football, and so, you know, he's the one who made me mean, you know, so you can blame it on him. And he didn't do anything. He was great, but he just always told me that I had to get mean, you know what I mean? And so that's when I really started focusing on being just aggressive. And that's how I kind of made my bones, man, was two things. I was crazy. Well, I mean, I was physically, you know, I was talented, but I was over the top aggressive, and I played middle linebacker, so that you're supposed to be. I was over the top aggressive, and I studied the game. You know what I mean? Like in a day and age where, you know, we had the old school film, you know, and you'd rewind it back and forth. Man, I watched game film, and I could tell you, like I was a Jedi, man, I could tell you by how they came out in their stances. And anyway, I knew what was going to happen before it was going to happen.
Yeah.
So if you combine that with a little bit of ability and desire, man, I made some tackles, you know.
Yeah.
So I was able to make some tackles, and played with great guys, man. Like some of my great played with addicts, John Addicts, John Higman, Jason Brown, man. Like too many names to list, but man, great friends, great players. So many guys, you know, that could have played Division I football. Like I'm telling you, I could go down a list of guys that could have played Division I football, and for whatever reason, they just didn't either believe in themselves. Nobody else believed in them besides me, and things just didn't materialize for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that probably feeds into why I'm so passionate about some other things. But because I saw friends that could have done well. That, I mean, they're all great. Like they're all doing great.
Yeah.
So anyway, I played ball, and then I had an opportunity to go play at SMU for a little while, and then I lost my mind. Thought I was tired of playing football, and again, that's another reason. That's another thing that feeds into why I'm so passionate about helping people be successful. You know what I mean, and kind of that process. Yeah. And when I thought I was tired of playing football, then I kind of looked around. I'm like, well, I'm a warrior. I know I'm a warrior. Where are the warriors at? And so I started looking around at all the different branches of special operations. My dad had been a force recon Marine during Vietnam. He was a old school jungle, you know, assassin. And so I started looking at each branch of the military. I went to the Army to talk about Delta and SF and the Rangers. I went to the Marine Corps and talked to them about force recon and recon. And ultimately, man, I settled on the SEAL teams. And, you know, it was a godsend. It was a blessing. And, man, I made it through and got to go into the SEAL teams, you know. And so then after that, man, I started having kids, and I wanted to be around. You know, this is mid-'90s. The wars weren't going on yet. And so there, other than just me having fun, you know, which being a SEAL is man, I used to say the best job in the world for a young single guy. I would say now it's the best job in the world for a old married guy, because dude, I'd be back there like that if they let me. And but the wars weren't going on, so you know, and I had a 3-year-old when it came time to end of my enlistment. I had a 3-year-old. I had a brand new baby coming on the way, and so I got out, man, so I could be a dad, and you know, then kind of launched my civilian careers and ended up being, you know, a children's pastor for a while, and a connections pastor, and then now I'm an executive pastor at a small church that also, you know, doubles as a jiu-jitsu academy. And I teach jiu-jitsu. I have Invincible Academy Jiu-Jitsu. I teach jiu-jitsu every day, and so that's my job, man. That's
your
my
passion.
That's my career. It's one of my passions, but it's my profession, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man. So that's it.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for sharing all that with us. And, you know, there's the common thing I see in this is you seem like the person that's always walked your own path. When I say that, what does that mean to you, and what would you want others to learn from that, on like how you chose to walk your own path?
So that can be good and bad. That can be good and bad, right? And here's what I'll say. You're right. I've always done, like, I have rarely asked anybody what they thought I should do. You know what I mean? Like, I even when I should have. And so I'll give you an example. When I decided, I thought I was tired of playing football. I was tired of playing football. More importantly, I was tired of going to school. Right? Like, really, that was the big deal. I was never a disciplined student. Never, man. Like, the two best days of the year were the day we got out for summer, you know, and the day we got out for Christmas. The two worst days of the year for me were, and I would change all this if I could go back, but the two worst days were when we went back to school and we went back after Christmas. You know what I mean? Like, I was never a school guy. And kudos to teachers. I think teachers do it much better now because the kids, apparently, they love school a whole lot more than we did back in the day. And, I mean, we had great teachers, don't get me wrong. But anyway, when I thought I was tired of playing football, and again, I was, you know, 19, 20 years old, and, you know, you really don't know anything, man, when you're not. You don't. The older you get, the more you realize how little you knew, right, when you were young.
And you thought you knew it all.
But you thought you knew everything, you know. And so I literally, man, I just made decisions. My dad, when I decided to leave SMU, I didn't ask anybody. I didn't tell anybody. And this is not a good thing. This is a regret that I have. But I didn't ask anybody. Okay. I didn't tell anybody. I walked in. I talked to and I was starting, man. I was a defensive captain. I was you know, I mean, I was one of the prominent players, right? And I was going to start every game, barring injury, for 4 years, right? Crazy. That's what my coach said. So I walked in. I talked to the defensive coordinator, who was a linebacker coach, and I said, "Hey, man, anyway, I told him, and he told me, he was like, Scott, he goes, you're going to start and this guy had played. His name's Dale Lindsey. Shout out to Dale. He played 10 years with the Cleveland Browns with Jim Brown, who's one of the greatest football players of all time. He coached in the NFL from the time he played. I think he coached high school for a few years. Then he coached with Forrest Gregg all the way up through, man, the mid-'90s. Matter of fact, he literally just retired from coaching college in his 80s. Coached the great linebacker. Coached Junior Seau, who's one of the best linebackers of all time. Coached on the field against some of the greatest NFL players. I mean, think about it, from the 60s through the mid-'90s, man. Like, that encompasses some of the greatest players in the history of the game.
Absolutely.
And he told me, he was like, Scott, he goes, you're going to start, barring injury, every game for the next 4 years. You could have every tackling record in SMU history, you know. We talked about it. He said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to leave your jersey, all your uniform. We were opening against the University of Texas. Think about this, man. This is how stupid I was. We're going to open against the University of Texas, man. I'm going to be I'm in the middle of the day. I'm going to be playing against the University of Texas. And he said, I'm going to leave your uniform in your locker. And this was about 2 weeks before we opened. He said, you show up game day, man, put your uniform on, you're back in. Like, it's your position. And I was just thinking about it earlier. I'm like, man, how cool would that? I should have done it. Like, I should have just, how cool would that story be? I just show back up that day. But I'm like, hey, man, if you guys will have me, I'll be, you know.
Yeah.
And But I didn't. I thought I was done. I thought I was tired of it. And I didn't ask anybody their opinion. My dad, which my mom and dad were divorced, so he and I loved him. We had a great relationship, but we didn't have that kind of relationship. My dad literally found out about me leaving SMU by reading about it in the Dallas Morning News sports section.
Oh,
now think about that, right? Like I'd already transferred to another school just to hang out with a buddy of mine. And he calls me and he's like, son, I see you left SMU. I'm like, how'd you know? He's like, man, they got a story about it in the Dallas Morning News. That for young folks, that was a newspaper they used to like.
Yeah.
And so that's a decision I regret, but it was something, and honestly, that was probably the last decision that I made, because I doubt I even prayed about it. I know I didn't. I know I didn't pray about it. You know what I mean? I was just like, I was a young dude, done. This is what I'm just making this decision. That was the last time that, and I learned a lot of valuable lessons about it that carried over to the rest of my life. But that was the last time that I didn't pray about any major decisions before I made them. And but yeah, I didn't ask anybody anything. And so after that, I have walked my own path. I have done pretty much what I've felt like God has called me to do. I've never really tried to make money. You know what I mean? Money's never been a huge, although it's a little bit more now, a little bit more of a motivator now. But it was never, back then, I used to tell people, like, I just do what I want to do, man. Whatever it was. You know what I mean? Like it was always something bigger than me. And I went and did it. And so, and then, later on, so it was the SEAL teams. And then when I got out, God called me into ministry, went into children's ministry, and that was totally like a 180 from what I thought. Nobody would have ever thought I was going to be a children's pastor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I was
Navy SEAL to children's pastor.
Yeah, like I may be the only one on earth ever that's ever done that. But that was his plan, man, and he kind of, when I started feeling called to ministry, I thought it would be coaching, and he got right in the middle of that and made some other opportunities. And so I ended up being a children's pastor for about 8 years, I think. And that was a huge blessing, man. Like that was some of the best times of my life, and it led into other areas of ministry. And so yeah, and I never, kind of speaking to the walk in your own path deal, one thing I can say to that is that I've never, anything that I've ever done, and this can be, because like I said, man, I should have gotten some counsel. I should have gotten some wise counsel. When I thought I was quitting, when I thought I was tired of playing football, I should have asked my uncle, Don, that I've said, hey, what do you think about this? I should have asked my mom, hey, what do you think about this? And then I should have listened to what they said. But I didn't, you know what I mean? And,
yeah.
But other than, like, I've never thought to myself, well, man, I'd like to do this, but I'm nervous about what people will think about it. Like, I've never given a crap about what people have thought about my convictions.
Yeah.
And so, and overall, man, like, God has blessed and redeemed every bad decision I've made pretty much, and he's blessed me, man, more than I deserve, for sure. So
that's awesome, man. Where did you sort out kind of finding your purpose and passion in all of this? Like, in combining those to like be, because you're very passionate about select things. I feel like you're involved in a lot of things, but I feel like they're very calculated decisions. They're very focused. Like, yeah, you do a lot of things, but yet you're still able to tie your purpose and your passions together. And I think that's part of what makes you very successful at all the things you do. Was that something you feel was instilled in you, God-given? Was this things you learned in the SEAL teams that helped you refine and focus these mentalities and stuff?
I think that's a good question, man. I think that probably a little bit of all of that. I think I'll tell you this. He intertwined it all. I don't think I could have orchestrated it as well. You know what I mean? Like the way it's all worked out, I just don't think I could have sat back and said, there's some things that I've said, man, I'm going to do this, and I went and did it. You know what I mean? And there's some other things that said this, I'm going to do it. You know, a lot of stuff. But a lot of it are interests and things that he just put in me. You know, he put a lot of desires in me that are pretty diverse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, which I'm appreciative of. And then, you know, I had the blessing, man, of having incredible parents who loved me, and even though they were split, you know, like, man, they were my biggest fans, and so they invested in me. And my mom, you know, the greatest gift that she ever gave me, besides having me in church when I didn't want to be, was, man, she always made me believe I could do anything I wanted to do. I mean, like, she made me believe that I could accomplish anything on earth that I could accomplish, that I wanted. And I had friends whose parents didn't do that, man.
Yeah.
You know, probably most parents don't really, either they don't, anyway.
It's kind of, they let their own shortcomings not get past that.
Yeah, they I think probably, I know this for a fact, most people have an unrealistic understanding of what is realistic and possible. And it's not on the top end. In other words, they don't think great things are realistic and possible. They think too often accomplishing great things are unrealistic and not possible. That's what most people think. And my mom was just the opposite. I could do it. She made me believe, man, nothing was unrealistic and nothing was impossible. And that's, I think, truer for people than the opposite is. And they just don't know how to get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, anyway, long way around to answer your question, man. I think God just kind of aligned all these things. And, you know, a lot of the core principles and fundamentals, so to speak, that I learned in football, man, in sports, through the Bible, in the SEAL teams, through jiu-jitsu, all of those things, they all line up, and, you know, they're congruent. In other words, they all line up to get to the point where you can do it all.
Yeah.
And not, you know, and my faith is the foundation. So that has kept me from incongruence, right? From being, you know, like, I mean, I'm a Christian, but I'm also an outlaw biker. Well, people say, how can that happen? Well, it can happen if you have the right foundation, you know. And when I say outlaw biker, I don't mean criminal. It's a whole different conversation. But anyway, it's a God thing.
Gotcha. So real quick, for any of you guys that are I'm seeing that there's a lot of parent problems with Facebook tonight. So if you're still listening to us on this, jump over to YouTube. YouTube's not having any problems. I'll even watch YouTube a little closer in case you guys are on here asking questions. The link's in all of the post notes there. So if you guys want to jump on there, that's another place you guys can watch this, because I know some of you are getting the short end of it on Facebook tonight for whatever reason. So just wanted to give you that real quick. So were there any, like, as I told you when you and I were talking about this, Scott, I didn't want this to like turn into like a big conversation about buds and stuff like that. Right. Because I'm sure you've done thousands of interviews on what it was like to go through buds and everything like that. Well, I do think that's important, though. Were there any like turning points or big roadblocks early on in your life that you thought that was a stopping point, or that, you know, aside from the football thing, that like, this is a roadblock? I don't know how I'm going to get past this. I don't know how I'm going to make it through this next day of hell week. You know, something of those natures, maybe more in your personal life than buds. But if you want to go to buds for a story, that's fine too. Don't want to say don't do that, but you know, was there a roadblock or something like that accomplishing that and getting past what you thought, even though you're a very I can do anything type guy, was there a lesson you learned at some point that was very critical to shaping that further for you?
Man, I'll tell you, probably the biggest. So, and again, man, and I don't say this flippantly or arrogantly, but like, and you know, and I mean, the dudes that you know that know me, like they'll echo this, but like, there's never been anything that I've been like, man, like that's a roadblock, or that's a showstopper. Now, there've been a lot of miserable, horrible moments where you got to make a decision. Do I quit or do I keep driving on? Do I keep persevering? And there've been a lot of, you know, and obviously, you know, in the SEAL teams and even, I mean, after buds is hard. Don't get me wrong. It's a gut check. I mean, it's a can you hack it situation. But once you get through buds, the SEAL teams are harder. Just the stuff that we would do on a day-to-day basis, from a performance standpoint, from a misery standpoint, is harder, right? Like when you're going through buds, they tell you, the instructors, I mean, you're as cold as you've ever been, ridiculously. It's so stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, and the instructors will tell you, hey, you're going to be colder when you get to the SEAL teams. So like you're sitting there and you're just shaking. You can't stop shaking. You're uncontrollably cold and miserable and you're hurting and it's painful. And the instructors are like, bro, you suck it up, man. Like when you get to the teams, you're going to be colder than this. And you don't think it's possible.
Yeah.
Until you get to the teams and you're colder. And you're like, I'm closer to quitting right now than I was in buds. You know what I mean? Like, so, but I'll tell you one moment that was probably a watershed moment for me. And it's a buds deal. So there's a thing in buds where they call it a hygiene inspection, right? Because this was actually during Hell Week. They have you, and Hell Week is like 5.5 days. I got about an hour and a half sleep for 5.5 days. And the whole time they're torturing you. It's miserable. You can look it up.
Yeah.
Miserable. And so, but there's this one part where they've got you, so they have these showers over here, and this is right on the beach, and they have these showers that are spraying cold water, and you have to go over there, get sprayed down, and the medics, the corpsmen, check you. The instructors that are corpsmen check you for cuts and abrasions and broken bones and all this kind of stuff. Because guys they won't tell anybody. They want to make it through, you know?
Yeah.
And so these guys, they're checking your hygiene to make sure you're good to go. Well, while you're not over there getting that done and kind of you're in this holding pattern, you're over here on this concrete slab in nothing but these little like spandex, they called them tri-shorts back in the days before Under Armour and all that, but it was basically Under Armour, little underwear. And the instructors are walking and you're just shaking. I mean, you're just, because the wind is blowing in and off the ocean, it's 60 degrees out, 50 degrees outside, you're soaking wet. You've been like that this was like Wednesday night, I think. And they're hosing you down with these cold water hoses, cold water. They're just hosing you down to the point where like you're laying on your back and my hip flexors had cramped up so much that they were picking my feet up about 6 inches off the ground. So I couldn't even put my feet down. Like my hip flexors had just contracted. It felt like somebody stabbing each one of my hips with a butcher knife. That's what it felt like. And the instructors are walking around. They're going like, "Hey, all we need is one quitter. If we get one quitter, we'll stop this. We'll secure the evolution." You know what I mean? One quitter. And I'm like, "Hey, dude, quit. You know, like get out of here. You know, like because I'm thinking, hey, if I can talk them into quitting, they're going to quit. Anyway, you know." And somebody would quit down the line. Nobody that I ever tried to get to quit, by the way. But somebody would quit, and then the instructors, they wouldn't secure it. You know, they're just lying to me. But I remember seeing a guy get up and quit, and I'm miserable, man. Like my hip flexors, like I said, man, literally feels like somebody stabbing my hip. And I had tight hip flexors from all the squats and being, you know, I didn't train for buds. Like I wasn't a long distance anything, man. I was a run through that wall and tear stuff up guy, right? So anyway, but I remember laying there thinking, well, I saw that guy get up and quit. I remember thinking if my mom was here, she wouldn't quit. And that was kind of a watershed moment. I'm like, man, I don't care what they do to me. Like I'm not quitting, you know. And people ask all the time, and you'll hear other team guys say, hey, if somebody tells you that they never thought about quitting, they're lying. And, man, I just disagree with that because that's the extent of me thinking about quitting. And it was thinking, I ain't quitting. You know what I mean? So, which that has played into so much of the rest of my life, man, because not quitting is a big deal. Like that's probably the biggest deal is just not quitting, you know. And that's of all the stuff, and there's a whole bunch of things, man, that I brought out of the SEAL teams that helped me be successful in things. Probably the number one, if I could pass on any attribute to somebody, it would be simply don't be a quitter. You know. So
I think this is a good time for this too. I'm gonna bring this out. So, you and I talked about this a little bit earlier. Anybody that served, I asked them to sign this. If you want a drink, I got you a glass there. But this is a bottle that me and some of the bourbon guys did. It's part of the 22 Kill. Yeah. Those of you guys seen this? This was a Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Select. Would love to share it with you. I only share it with people that served. And then have you sign the box and stuff later on. But if you would like a pour of that, feel free to help yourself.
Sure. Hey, I'm not gonna have too much. I'm not a
you just have, as long as you have a sip, we're good.
You know, man, I'm a
qualifying round here.
I'll leave it. I'm not gonna.
We'll go qualifying round.
That's enough. That's enough for me.
You don't have to treat it like it's John Addict's Crown bottle. You know, we won't go back that.
You know that sorry dog shot me in the eyeball with a Roman candle one time.
That doesn't. No.
He remembers it too.
I'll bet he does. I can't wait to hear about it because I'm sure I'm going to hear all about it after this. Yeah. And he lived to tell the story. He did. But he doesn't tell the story, so that might say something.
A little less known fact is I was voted most friendly in high school. So,
okay.
Yeah, I had some accolades, but one of them is most friendly, so don't ever get
there. You go.
Yeah, man. So we're going to toast this or what?
Yeah, you know what?
Yeah, you mean sign it already or?
We'll do it after the show. Okay. We won't worry about that right now, but I'll have one with you too.
Yeah, man.
I don't always pour from this one, so why not? We'll have.
Hey, 22 Kill for y'all that don't know. There's a bad situation, man, where they say 22, and I think now it's more 22 vets.
It's higher.
Yeah, they kill themselves on a daily basis. 22 vets kill themselves on a daily basis, and man, I hate it. I've lost good friends that were vets. Matter of fact, man, my platoon leader from Buds, a dude named Joe Price, one of my great friends, went on. Man, I could tell you. Oh my gosh, you talk about funny stories. And the guys that were in my Buds class, the instructors hated him. He was such a good dude, but they hated him, which meant they hammered us. Mm-hmm. All through third phase specifically. And anyway, too many people take their own, too many people, man.
Absolutely.
Right on.
Cheers, brother.
Yeah, man.
Damn it. He's the second one. All these Navy SEALs, man, when they do drink liquor, they don't hesitate, man. They throw that shit down the hatch.
That's it. I'm done.
Woo.
I'm done.
Whew, man. All right, now I'm definitely ready to go. Whew. So, I know you and I talked about this a little bit when we were preparing for the show here. And I know writing a book is something you've mentioned to me. I'm sure you probably mentioned to others, but it's something you have in your plans. It's something down the road where you want to share more. You and I talked about a process you have and something that you really think helps you, and I think it's something you teach through your academy as well, about goal setting and accomplishing your goal, and the difference in that of not just winning, but accomplishing your goals.
Yeah. So, and there's a giant process and all that. But here's the thing, and you know, people don't read enough. Number one, people don't read enough. They don't read. There are self-help books get a bad rap, but there are books out there that outline a process of how to be successful in life, you know? And man, there may be somebody out there who, and I'll say this, I'm going to be very governed by what all I say, because, you know, people rip people off all the time. But it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I mean, knowing something and doing it are two different things, right? But,
absolutely.
But the thing that I feel like, I believe that I may be a little bit different is just the simplicity. I think I can convey this in as simple a terms as possible, right? And talk about goals or just accomplishing goals, right? Accomplishing goals is pretty simple. It's not easy, but it's pretty simple. I don't care what goal it is. There's about 4 steps, right? Number one, you got to have the goal. You got to clearly identify the goal. And you can say, and I'm going to just kind of go through this, and so here's the thing. If you're out there, man, take some notes, because I'm telling you, if you do this, you will be wildly successful, and you'll accomplish stuff that you want to accomplish. Number one, you got to clearly identify the goal, right? That's not rocket science. Figure out what it is. I want to be a Navy SEAL. I want to be a professional football player. I want to bench press 500 pounds. I want to get my master's degree. I want to fill in the blank. Yeah. Identify the goal, write it down. Number two,
I think writing it down is key too.
Writing it down. So each one of these, I'm going to tell you kind of the big picture. And then each one behind it, there's a whole strategy, tactics, techniques, and procedures that kind of help each one, right? But absolutely. Identify the goal. Number two, you got to figure out what you have to do to accomplish the goal, right? The steps, action steps, so to speak. You got to identify that. And here's the thing. You can figure that out, man. It's 2023. You can figure out. I could tell you, you could give me any goal you have. Mm-hmm. And man, with this thing right here, I could tell you pretty much what you have to do to accomplish that goal.
Yeah.
Like it's not rocket science. I mean, the information's out there. There are a lot of things I can tell you what you need to do to accomplish with the goals you have. There are a lot of things, man, a lot of areas I can tell without looking anything up. I'm gonna say, do this, do this, do this, do this. So that's number two. Figure out what you have to do to accomplish the goal. Number three, you have to exercise self-discipline to make yourself do the things that are required to accomplish the goal. It's very simple. You have the goal. You have the things that you have to do to get to the goal. And then you have to make yourself do those things. Nobody else is going to make you, especially grown-ups. Nobody's going to make you. So you have the goal, the things required to get to the goal, to accomplish the goal, and you have to make yourself do those things. And then the fourth thing, man, is very simple. You just don't quit.
That's awesome.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Now, if you find a book out there that tells you in that manner, I want to hear about it. I want to know, right? Because I want to read the book.
Yeah, there's, I mean.
But that is as simple. And listen, talent's nowhere in there.
No. Talent
is nowhere in there. Now, you can, under the goal, under each one of those, right, you can, there are strategies that help you determine what is a realistic goal. But I can, like I said earlier, man, a realistic goal should be much higher. You tell me, what's realistic? Bro, we've all seen things that have been accomplished by people who should not have been able to accomplish it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that means the thing that was theoretically an unrealistic goal for them was really realistic. And they refused to believe that it was unrealistic. And that's where I get back to my mom. Bro, there was nothing unrealistic. I could have accomplished, I could be sitting here today and I could have been an astronaut. I could have been a pro football player. I could have done anything that I decided to accomplish. If I followed that formula, 100% that I could have accomplished. And people go, well, people are, they're pessimists. They're like, oh, well, you couldn't have done this and you couldn't have done that. I'll tell you a real fast, short story, man. I had a friend, a good friend of mine, who absolutely could have played probably Division III football. Because, while talent is not mentioned in that formula, talent plays a factor.
Yeah. Especially when you're talking about certain key things.
Sure. But that kid, he wanted to play college ball. His goal was to play college ball. 100% realistic. 100% realistic. Division I? Maybe not. Maybe. You don't know. Maybe. But I sat in his living room with his parents, and I was trying to talk. I had magazines out. I had NFL magazines. I'm like, look, bro, like you could go here and play. You could go here and play, and this guy's playing in the NFL from that college.
Yeah.
Like you could go to this school. And I'm sitting there with his parents. I'm a senior. We're both seniors. We're sitting there, and I'm trying to talk him into trying to go and walk on at some school because he didn't have a scholarship offer. Because I knew he could play at Division III, no problem. Well, let me tell you something. You know what playing Division III college football makes you? A college football player.
Absolutely.
For the rest of your life. You know what I mean? And I told him, I said, bro, you can go do this. Well, his parents are sitting right there, and they're like, Scott, he's not like you. He can't go and play. And I flipped. I'm like, that's bull crap. I'm like, that's because you're telling him he can't go play.
Yeah.
There aren't college coaches telling him he can't come play. You're telling him he can't come play. You're the one setting the ceiling on his opportunity to reach his goals.
And his potential.
Right. But he listens to his parents.
Yeah.
And so he just goes to work or whatever, And so, anyway, that's a long way around. Most goals that people have for themselves really are realistic for them. Like most people, they don't go, man, most people just, if they have a dream or a goal, it's really not unrealistic for them. Even if it's high. It's still reachable.
And that ties into what's funny is every person that's signed this box so far or the bottle, the common denominators are these two things. They write, never quit, take the shot.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's multiple branches. This is not singled out to just SEALs.
Right.
There's Marine Recon on here.
Right.
There's SEALs. There's,
the SEALs
it's not,
better, but
it's a common denominator. Just like they say with, there's a lot of studies coming out about the guys that make it through to special operations and like what was their childhood like, what's their background, all these things. And the number one thing that comes out is the never quit mentality.
Yeah.
That these guys would rather die than quit.
Yeah.
I mean, in the most simplistic of terms, too. I mean, like, it doesn't have to be like physically go die.
Right.
But like they would rather, I mean, like, that isn't even an option that registers with them. Like, they're like, I'm going to do this. I don't care how miserable it gets.
Yeah.
No matter what you throw at me, I might not succeed right away, but I'm not going to quit.
Right. Right.
And I think that's where a lot of the fascination, you know, aside from all the action and the badassery that comes through it. But I think that's why it relates to so many people, and why, you know, people that never were on the special forces, maybe not even in the military, they're absolutely fascinated with it because they can see those qualities, that mentality, and they want to figure out a way to apply that in their lives. Yeah. So I think that's dead on.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the, you know, I think this is probably common across the board now in the other branches, the other special operations communities, right? Army Special Forces, Delta, the Marine Raiders, the Air Force PJs, Rain. I mean, there's a bunch of different
Airborne, whatever.
Yeah, you know. Now, it's better if you're a good athlete. I mean, obviously, they want good athletes. When I went through SEAL training, you had to be a good athlete. You couldn't be like, you didn't have to be a super athlete, but you had to be a pretty good athlete because they had performance standards.
Yeah.
You know,
it's not like regular Navy boot camp where it's like, run a mile in under 15 minutes and
but, you know,
make sure that the guy that weighs 400 pounds can you know, finish with you guys.
Right. But back in the day, man, like back in the old UDT days and the early SEAL team days, they didn't have time standards and stuff on things. It was just, you didn't quit, you sucked it up, they punished you, and you made it through, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's like everything else with competition. With more people wanting to be something, they got to figure out how to weed people out. So they kept raising the bar, time standards, ability, all this kind. So you had to end up. So when I went through, you know, you had to be a pretty good athlete to get through. You didn't have to be, you know, a D1 athlete, but you had to be an athlete. You couldn't just be just a normal guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You had to be a pretty good athlete. Which, I mean, we all went to school like with dudes who were pretty good athletes.
Right.
They may not have been an all-state this or that, but they were still good athletes. Right?
Yeah.
That's what you have to be. But the common denominator is dudes who, one, don't quit, and two, are mission-oriented. You know what I mean? Like, accomplish the mission no matter what. And, man, I think there's so much takeaway from that you can apply to the civilian. I know for a fact, man. Like, I apply that to my jiu-jitsu academy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the guys doing jiu-jitsu, I'm like, all you got to do is not quit. You don't. If you want to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu, which is a superpower, by the way, all you got to do is just keep walking through the doors. We tell kids every day, we tell adults every day, the secret to jiu-jitsu is walking through the doors. You don't have to be good today, tomorrow, whatever. All you got to do is keep showing up. All you got to do is not quit. And that's, you know, on those four things, right? The goal, the action steps, the self-discipline, the not quitting. Most people think that the self-discipline is where most people fail. That's not where most people fail, man. Where most people fail is they just quit too early. That's where most people fail in accomplishing their dreams, their goals. They just quit too early. They quit when they don't achieve success according to their timeline. They quit when it's not fun anymore. That's a big one, man. Like, that's a big one.
That's you in college.
Right, exactly. It's exactly right. They quit when it's not fun anymore. They quit when they are not achieving accolades, you know, when nobody's giving them accolades.
Yeah.
They quit when they get bored. Oh, my gosh, that's a big deal. I could talk about that. Like,
boredom.
you could even You could be winning. So by one of the things I would love to do is be on the Cowboys staff because we'd win Super Bowl after Super Bowl. So Super Bowl.
I like this. I like where this is going.
But here's the thing: we could win 10 Super Bowls in a row. If the Cowboys put me on staff, we would win 10 Super Bowls in a row. The only reason we'd stop winning Super Bowls is if they got bored with the process, because humans too often get bored. They get bored instead of trusting processes that give them success.
Yeah.
And we've done the same thing and we've won championships every year.
Yeah.
I'm tired of doing that. Well, are you tired of winning? You know what I mean? And you know, Mike Tyson, somebody asked him, they're like, man, what's it like being a champion? This was when he was young, you know, and he was like, man, the boredom. And they're like, what are you talking about, the boredom? And this is kind of bleeding over into some of the other stuff that I don't want to give away too much. But he said, he was like, man, he goes, being a champion's boring. And they're like, why? And they're like, because you got to wake up every day and do the same thing over and over and over and over. He's like, you got to wake up at 4 o'clock every morning and get your road work in. Then you got to go to the gym and you got to do that. And people don't want to do that. But that's what it takes to be a champion. You know what I mean? And so when people, so people quit when it gets boring. They quit when it's not fun. They quit when it's hard. They quit when they're not motivated. They quit when, you know, they feel like they're not achieving things according to their timeline. So those people are quitters.
So where in your life have you been challenged to maintain motivation, to maintain when you thought, I don't really have this in me anymore, like, or I'm really tired of this. You know, I know this, and Scott, you know, I'm your mentor, and I'm telling you, hey, I just laid this plan out for you. As long as you keep doing it, you're gonna do it. But when you have those, like, you know, I feel like a lot of that's cyclical for me. Like, you know, like even seasonal. Yeah. You know, in the fall and the spring, man, I'm highly motivated. Like you know, the brain's flowing. You know, like I've got all these great ideas. I'm super passionate. And then you get to the winter days, the summer days, the dog days. You know, where do you pull a lot of that inner from when it is tough? Like to not give in, to not quit, to push that extra. When everything's stacked up and says, "Oh man, I should just quit," or man, you know, maybe this isn't going to work out. Like, where do you pull that from?
So you just do it anyway.
Just do it anyway.
Self-discipline. You know, and here's the thing, and don't get it twisted, man. There are things like that. There are times in my life that I've been incredibly self-disciplined about certain things. And this is one thing I want people to take some encouragement from. Nobody out there has any more discipline than anybody else. Nobody you know is any more disciplined than anybody else. What they do is they choose to exercise discipline in certain areas where you don't, or where, you know, maybe you've kind of given up on. And so I'll give you an example, man. There are probably areas in your life that you don't exercise very good discipline.
Absolutely.
I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter. But there are other areas, this podcast, where you choose to exercise incredible discipline. You're on time here. You research. You do the thing. You know what I mean? Like, you choose to exercise self-discipline when it comes to this podcast. In other areas, you choose not to exercise self-discipline. And that's the story of everybody's life, man. I made myself included.
Yeah.
You know, myself
absolutely.
included. And so when you recognize that all I've got to do is whatever my goal is, I have to choose to exercise self-discipline to do the things that are required to get to that goal. I can be lazy over here. I don't have to exercise. Now, I'm not recommending that. You know what I mean? But like, you don't have to. That's everybody, man. Like, there are things in my life where I don't exercise. I haven't exercised as much self-discipline in certain areas as I have in other. And I'll give you an example. When I was in, man, I haven't worked out. I haven't lifted weights consistently in probably 20, 25 years. Okay, that's a flaw. I need to. I'm banking on the first 30 years of my life, or whatever the time frame in there, when I was 12 years old to probably 35. 12 to 35. Okay, 22 years. Bro, nobody on earth was more disciplined when it came to lifting weights. And when it came to doing the things, sprints, whatever. Like, I went from crazy, in high school I was fast. I was probably a 4.6 guy in high school. A year and a half, I was a 4.5 guy. If I hadn't quit, I would have ended up being a 4.4 guy. 40-yard dash, right? Because of doing the things that the speed coaches told me to do.
Yeah.
Right? Strength-wise, I was crazy disciplined on being in the weight room. I told my mom one time, I had another great mentor of mine, a guy named James Wright. Him and a guy named Jimmy Hughes started a gym in Wiley when I was a 8th grader. God bless Coach Schaefer. But they didn't know anything about lifting weights to get strong. Now, I take that back. He might have known, but it's not what we did.
Right.
Because we played both sides. He wanted us to be strong and fit, right? So I met these guys, Jimmy Hughes and James Wright, and they opened a gym in Wiley. And Jimmy had the bench press record the whole time I was growing up, right? 400 pounds, high school. And, man, they opened a gym in Wiley, and I was incredibly disciplined. Me and Hickman and some other guys, probably just me and John, man. We were the two dudes and so, bro, we would slack off during the off-season workout and then go to JJ's Powerhouse and freaking hit it 4 nights a week, 2 hours a night, uncompromised. Like, we didn't miss.
Yeah, you guys weren't the guys at the parties.
No, we were now. I mean, we were at the parties too on the weekends, but I didn't.
Here and there.
We were. I fought a little bit, but anyway. But here's the thing. I exercised incredible self-discipline on that, because that I knew would contribute to my goal, which was playing college and pro football.
Yeah.
Right. But you know where I exercised zero self-discipline? In school. Zero. I graduated high school because I just happened to be smart. I could get some. I mean, literally, I'm not advocating this. Literally, I had other people do some of my homework sometimes. But if I could go back, if I knew what I knew now, I would go back, and I would kill it in school. I would use as much self-discipline, because I understand how much knowledge is power. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So. But anyway, my point is, I exercised incredible self-discipline in the weight room, and everything that I believed would get me to my goal, except for I didn't understand that academics was part of that formula. And for the people out there, man, like, that's where you're at. You exercise, if you will just choose. You have a goal. You know what you have to do to get to that goal. If you will just choose to exercise self-discipline and make yourself. See, the problem with adults and accomplishing our goals is nobody can make us do anything. Nobody can make me get up early in the morning and do what I'm supposed to do to accomplish my goals. But if you will choose to exercise self-discipline and make yourself do those things and then just not quit, it may not be on your timeline. You may be 80 years old, but you'll accomplish it.
Yeah.
Relatively speaking. Does
Absolutely.
that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. That's why we do this show, for nuggets like that right there. I'm going to stop real quick and give you some comments over here, just because you got some people. I don't want to not acknowledge these people here. You got Dennis Keck wants to say, Scott was a great influence on my son who became a SEAL.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. And let me tell you, so that is a good way to segue into jiu-jitsu, because his son was a stud. His name's Lorenzo. And so he came to me so I baptized him when he was little bitty, man. He was this old.
Okay.
This old. And Dennis and I, we and he'll remember it, right? But he's an awesome guy. He's one of my great friends. But he and I duked it out a little bit over Lorenzo's baptism. back in the day. But anyway, Lorenzo went on to be a great linebacker at Wiley High. So in Wiley, there are 3 dudes that have made it into the SEAL teams. Me, I'm the oldest. You know what I mean? I'm the oldest.
You're the godfather.
Yeah, man, I'm the padrino, right? And then Sean Delaney, who's a stud, and he and I, we had an opportunity to talk a little while. And you know, a lot of people go, man, well, what about being, security measures and everything? And hey, and I'm here to tell you, hey, terrorist, if you want to go after Sean Delaney, go after him. He'll freaking rip your heart out. You know what I mean? Like, come see us.
Yeah.
Sean Delaney, and he played linebacker at Wiley as well. And then Lorenzo played as well. And so Lorenzo came to me, I don't remember if it was his senior year or after he finished playing ball. And he's like, hey, Pastor Scott, I want to be a Navy SEAL. What do I need to do? I'm like, well, number one, you need to keep playing football as long as you can play, right? And I've told other guys who've gone in the NFL, actually, I'm like, hey, who wanted to be SEALs, I'm like, hey, man, keep playing ball as long as you can. SEAL teams will be there after you play pro football, right?
Yeah, make your money.
Yeah, man, some listened, some didn't. Lorenzo didn't listen, man. He's fire-breathing dragon. He's ready to go. And so I said, well, if you're not going to go to college and play ball, which he could have, he was a stud. I said, you got to start learning jiu-jitsu, because all the best team guys, all the best guys in special operations, they're all jiu-jitsu guys.
Yeah, Jocko, all those
They're
guys.
all jiu-jitsu guys, man. And we were 20 years ahead of our time, because back in the day, the military didn't want to embrace jiu-jitsu. They didn't understand. And I was at my team preaching jiu-jitsu. Jocko was on his team preaching jiu-jitsu. There were dudes on the East Coast preaching. And now, it's kind of funny. Back in the day, I was in Hawaii. My jiu-jitsu professor at the time, Grandmaster now, Helson Gracie. He was on the island, like he was 5 minutes from my SEAL team. And the SEAL teams at the time were so naive back then, as was all military special operations on hand-to-hand combat. They wouldn't bring him over for a seminar, right? And I'm like, dude, y'all are like, we need to have him over here for a seminar. They're like, oh, Scott, man, if we've gone to hand-to-hand, we've already messed up. I'm like, bro, sir, commander, captain in the Navy. Every military engagement since the history of time, to include Iraq and Afghanistan, have had special operators engage in hand-to-hand combat. It's just part of the deal, man. But they were, they didn't want to listen. Well, the funny thing is now, or at least a couple of years ago, bro, so back then I couldn't even bring Helson over for a seminar. Now I can make a couple phone calls and I can be teaching jiu-jitsu full time at SEAL Team 6.
Yeah.
Like everybody now has gotten on board with what we were talking about, like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so Lorenzo started training with me, and my partner, Charlie Busby, who's the actual lead pastor at our church, is an awesome guy. Lorenzo started training with me, and he's an assassin, man. He's a stud. And yeah, man, he went to Buds, and now he's out there in the SEAL teams.
That's badass.
Yeah. So,
where did your life take on jiu-jitsu? When did jiu-jitsu become such a part of your life?
So, when I was in so I grew up fighting, man. I fought,
I've heard most of those stories.
Yeah, so I fought a lot. Never started a fight. I've never, to this day, never started a fight, despite what those guys say. And so, man, I remember seeing the Gracie Challenge when I was in high school. The Gracie brothers. I just had Helson Gracie at the academy the other day. He's my instructor.
You're a second-degree black belt, right?
Third
now?
Third. Yeah.
Congrats.
Should be sixth or whatever. But anyway, I digress. So we were just talking about this. But back in the day, man, when I was in high school, they had the Gracie Challenge where anybody could go to their academy and challenge them and fight. And they were humane in how they whipped people, the gentle art. And I remember seeing the ad in the back of Black Belt magazine. It was like, Gracie, like, I'll go fight those guys right now. I'll go fight them. Fortunately for them, they were in L.A. No, fortunately for me, right? And so anyway, I didn't think about it anymore. I boxed competitively. I kickboxed competitively. And then when I went in the teams, I wanted to go to the East Coast. At the end of Buds, you fill out a dream sheet, and I put, I think, teams 4, 2, and 8, all on the East Coast. Now there are more teams, but back then that's all it was. Well, they sent my whole class to the West Coast, to Hawaii. Sent my whole class. There were 17 of us. Besides the officers, so they sent 12 of us, I think, to Hawaii.
Rough spot to go.
Yeah, I know. But for us, it was, man. None of us wanted to go there, man. None of us wanted to go there. So anyway, that's where Helson Gracie was. That's where he lived. That's where he had academy. That's where he had his academy. And on a Friday, a great friend of mine, Justin Cowley, as tough a dude as, from Yonkers, New York. Anyway, on a Friday.
God, I haven't heard that in a long time.
Yeah, on a Friday.
Yonkers.
We get secured. He had already been training. I said, hey, man, what are you doing tonight? He's like, man, I'm going to do jiu-jitsu. I'm like, they got jiu-jitsu on the island? This was, I think, before the UFC. And he's like, yeah, man, Helson Gracie's here. And so anyway, I showed up, and I've been training almost 30 years ever since. So
that's awesome.
And that was a God thing because Helson's the guy I needed to train with. He's the dude that's got the most street fights, and he and I, as far as
relatability, and
he's crazy, but I love him, and he's still my guy.
That's awesome, man. So it sounds like you transform lives on the mat.
Yes.
Literally, whether it's a kid that wants to go to Buds, what all do you learn on the mat? And what life lessons do you think are so critical, aside from just not quitting and walking through the door? Where does this all tie in for you? Because I know it's something you're really passionate about. So,
and I talk to this with parents literally almost on the daily, dude. Jiu-jitsu, Jocko said this. I've been saying it for years. He and I have been saying, just so you know, Jocko's the first dude that I heard that, like, I've never met him, but like we've been saying the same things for the last 30 years. The exact same. It's crazy. And Grant, remember, that was before there were podcasts. That was before there was email, cell phones. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, we've been saying the same things. But here's the thing, jiu-jitsu really is, and I hope people will stick with me on this, because if there's one thing, if somebody asks me, what can I do to improve my life? Okay. So if I could give my sons 3 things. Number 1, I would give them Jesus. That's the most important thing on earth. I would give them Jesus. Number 2, I would give them the best family I could give them. You know what I mean? Like, just growing up, man.
Be like your mom was for you.
Yeah, and even more so, like a mom and a dad. Like, if I could give them the perfect family, that's what I would give them.
Yeah.
A mom there that loves them, a dad there that loves them, a dad that's masculine, that can train them right, like not a freaking pansy.
Yeah.
But just the best family they could have. That'd be the number 2 thing. Number 3, jiu-jitsu. That's crazy. I know. That's crazy talk, especially for somebody that sports and the military was all such a big part of my life. But here's the thing, man. And this is the jiu-jitsu people out there, this will resonate with. It's a superpower. And it's not just a superpower when it comes to handling physical conflict. It's a superpower when we're talking about developing the neuroplasticity of your brain, right? Which is the learnability that you have. It's a superpower when you talk about developing merited supreme self-confidence, right? And there's a difference between supreme self-confidence and merited supreme. Merited means it's legit, right?
Okay.
So like there are dudes out there that are supremely confident to the point of arrogance because they are pilots for American Airlines.
Okay.
Big guys, they're a pilot. It's a pretty prestigious position.
Right.
They've been successful their whole life. So they're supremely self-confident. But it's not merited. You know when it becomes unmerited? When somebody decides to take their lunch money. That's when all of a sudden, it doesn't matter how well you can fly a plane. It doesn't matter how well you can solve chemistry problems. It doesn't matter how well you can play the piano. It doesn't matter how well you can perform brain surgery. It doesn't matter how many times you've been to the moon as an astronaut. When somebody decides to take your lunch money, all that matters is whether or not you can defend yourself. And nothing on earth allows you to do that like jiu-jitsu. Nothing. And so, better than anything else on earth, including SEAL training, because I don't walk around with a freaking M4 strapped on my back. I don't walk around with claymores. I don't walk around with hand grenades.
Yeah.
But I walk around with jiu-jitsu. Everywhere I go, everything I do, I have jiu-jitsu. And it makes me the friendliest guy in the room. It makes me the calmest guy in the room. It makes me the best, the guy least likely to overreact to physical threats, the guy least likely to overreact to verbal threats.
Yeah, because there's always the little guy that wants to like fuck with the baddest dude.
Yeah, man.
Like, oh, you're a Navy SEAL, huh? I want to challenge you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, or oh, you were this star athlete at blah 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 blah. Like, it's always that. There's always that guy in the room. Like, it happens all the time. I have countless stories.
Man, you see it out there. You know what I mean? And I can and my companions, my peers who have jiu-jitsu, they don't have to be black belts. They just have to have a certain amount of it, right? They can be like, oh, my friend, let me buy you a drink.
Yeah.
It's okay. We don't have to fight.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to prove. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Let's be friends, you know? So that's the first thing. And here's the thing. That, all the other benefits, so most likely, I mean, my you know, my path's a little bit different from here on out because of some circumstances, motorcycle club. But most likely, I won't ever have to put my hands on anybody else again. Most likely. I don't work in that profession. You know, I pray that if terrorists show up, God brings them my way instead of somebody else's way that's not prepared for them. You know what I mean? But most likely that won't even happen. So most likely, for most people that train in jiu-jitsu, they're never going to have to physically put their hands on somebody. But the ability to do that, the willingness to do that, predicates all the other benefits.
Yeah.
And all the other benefits are humility, because every night on the mat, you get your butt whipped.
Yeah.
Even if you're the best guy in the room, you still get humbled. Because
I mean, I'm not coming to your gym. I don't want to get choked out by Monica.
No. You should come.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you should come. Because here's the thing. Like, we take care of new people anyway.
Yeah.
But like every night on the mats, we want people to be affirmed, right? Like we want them to experience, which by the way, we don't let new guys even spar because they don't know anything yet.
Yeah.
So it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
They just drill, they learn techniques, they drill. They learn jiu-jitsu, but they don't know how to move their bodies yet. Their bodies aren't hard yet. They don't know.
Not flexible.
They're not flexible. They don't know when to tap. They don't know, whatever. But, every night on the mats, once you get into it, once you've been into it for a while, you win some, which, man, builds your confidence. You lose some, which humbles you, which most people, because we got an incredible ladies program. You know.
Yeah, so I've watched Monica climb up there when she started. Bro. It's just like belt and belt and belt.
She's
and I'm like,
assassin.
God.
She's an assassin, man. She's an assassin. And she's tiny.
Yeah.
But she's an assassin. And we got a bunch of other ladies that are awesome. You know what I mean? Like we got... So Coach Monica's a brown belt.
I tease Brad about that when I see him because it's like Monica takes all these trips and stuff. I'm like, yeah, you're not worried about her. She's like, what, a purple belt now?
Yeah,
like
she's a brown belt.
Yeah, she's a
brown belt.
She's teared up.
Yeah, and so like she's a tiny assassin. She's one of our ladies coaches, by the way. If you're a lady out there wanting to do jiu-jitsu, man, we got a lady that she's tiny and but she's one of the best coaches at the academy. We got a black belt. I've got one of my black belts, Coach Susie. She's a freaking smashing machine, man. Like, she's incredibly technical, super sweet, but she's a smashing machine. I got black belts, other black belts, Coach Brandon, Professor Brandon, Professor Charlie. I got coaches that, anyway, we take care of all the new people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We have assassins. We got world champions. We got Pan American champions, but we take care of the new people. But what happens is every night on the match you get affirmed, which builds your confidence. You get humbled, which keeps you humble. Most men walking around don't get a dose of humility every day. And we would probably agree most men need a dose of humility. You know what I mean?
There's a whole lot of people, not just men, that need a little bit of humble. You know, everybody gets served some humble pie every once in a while.
Yeah. And then you persevere, man. Sometimes you just get with somebody and struggle. You can't submit them, they can't submit you, so you learn not to quit. You learn perseverance, you know. So anyway, all that to say, that's why I'm so passionate about jiu-jitsu is because in the best way that we can, it's a way to help people be successful in life because it transfers, all those things transfer to every other area of your life.
Absolutely.
They make you a better coach, a better husband, a better father, a better whatever it is. You know what I mean? So
helping you conquer fears. I mean,
absolutely.
Alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So what else are you a big advocate of? I mean, I kind of want to touch on this a little bit because I think one of the things I've always looked forward to that I've got to get signed up with, John and I have talked about doing it for years, is you also do like handgun courses and stuff and teach people how to be advanced levels with their pistols, guns, rifles, everything. Like,
so I think probably now more than ever, obviously, with the recent events that are taking place. So the things I'm passionate about, let me say this. I'm passionate about helping people win, right? Like, if the Dallas Cowboys could hire me, we would win Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl. That's no joke. With the same talent, without getting into Dak haters and
why do you say that? Because there's something that really resonates with me there. I've had some NFL guys on here before, right?
Okay, cool. Who?
Most of them, Jonathan Scott, had Tony Hills.
Okay, yeah.
Both of them UT guys.
Yeah.
Both of them were on the Vince Young teams.
Oh, really? Man, bro.
Like, amazing guys, right?
Yes,
and they both ended up at Steelers. They have their rings with the Steelers and stuff like that. And, you talk to these guys, and the thing that's always amazed me, and man, I'm a diehard Cowboy fan. I'm a season ticket holder. I love the Cowboys. Like, that's my team, right? Right on. And I really don't like the Steelers. I'm just going to be honest. I don't like the Steelers.
Me either.
I don't like the Steelers. But I respect the shit out of them.
I do too.
Because what these guys both said to me.
I like some of the Steelers. And
they were like, here's the difference. They're the most winningest organization in the NFL. We're not just talking about Super Bowls, but they don't have losing records. I mean, and how many coaches have they had in the last 40 years? I think it's 3.
I'm going to text some guys and tell them I don't even want to hear the...
So, it's 3 years or 30 years they've had 3 coaches. How many coaches have the Cowboys had in the last 10 years? Right? So What is the difference? You hear Mike Tomlin say this, and I absolutely love this. I'm a huge Mike Tomlin fan. The standard is the standard. And
good,
that sounds like a cop-out when he's giving a press conference.
Not if you understand
but
what that means.
But the team all understands exactly what he's saying. Yeah. The standard is the standard. We have a standard, and if we didn't live up to our standard, we got to do things to fix that and to live up to our standard. And if you can't do it, it's next man up. That guy's going to do it. That guy might take your job. And I'm fine with putting that guy in there because if he knows what the standard is and he's going to execute our standard, then fine. You might be a little more physically gifted than him, and I'd rather you have it. But if he understands the standard, then that's what we're about. Yeah. The Cowboys have no standard. Their standard is selling that star on the helmet, filling seats.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my personal opinion. Okay. So I'm curious as to how you feel about that because you've said this twice now of how if you could just come in there, you would wreck shop with the same guys, same everything, and do it. So, are you implementing a standard? What would fix that for you?
So here's the thing, right? Without divulging too much, because I'm working a plan, man. Like,
wow, you might be the next Cowboys head coach.
Well, not head coach, because here's the thing.
Defensive coordinator. All right,
man. Here's the deal, right? Like, when I got out of the Navy, I chose not to go into coaching. Later on, I planned on going to coaching. But that's when God got a hold of me and I became a children's pastor instead of a coach. I thought my ministry was going to be coaching. I coached all the boys. We won championships, so we dominated people. But anyway, but here's the thing. Some teams, and this will resonate, and people out there will, when were the Cowboys great?
90s.
The 90s, okay? They were great in the 90s. Why? Well, if you just had to say, why do you think, man, if you're not a Cowboys fan, if you're not a football fan, stick with us because this transcends not just sports, but being successful, winning is what we're talking about.
I think it has to do with Jimmy Johnson. And Jerry Johnson is the reason he's still not in the Ring of Honor and should be. I think Jimmy Johnson, whether Jerry Jones liked it or not, he set the standard.
Okay.
And he told these guys, this is what you're going to do. Okay. This is how you're going to go. I mean, yeah, we had great players. We have great players on our team now. So that isn't a deciding factor.
Right. No, it's not.
So the only things that are different is coaching. We still have the same ownership. So the leadership had to be better. Those players had to have more no quit in them. I'm gonna execute my goals. And be more of this team and be those things.
Yep.
So I think it has to do with the leadership and them having a higher standard for themselves.
Okay. All right. So I have to give a shout out to the DB, the Dirty Bastards MC. I'm sitting here using their bottle opener.
All right.
Because one of them, I don't remember.
It's probably Eric Hall.
Yeah, so he's an avid member here, right? So he's an old friend of mine.
Yeah,
and they brought in a DB, right? So we're gonna have
Army
to
guy.
We're gonna have to get a Christian's MC bottle opener in here too. Also,
all right.
I love the DBs, by the way. So the standards. Okay, so here's the thing: you got to have standards everywhere. Now, I'll say this: I believe that the Cowboys have standards. I believe they have standards. I believe, here's the deal. What do you do for a living, by the way, if you don't mind me asking?
I sell multifamily construction.
All right. There is way more. Here's what I know. There is way more to selling multifamily construction than our viewers understand. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That they'll never understand. They'll never know what all is behind selling multi-family construction.
Right.
The same is true of coaching in the NFL. I promise you, the Dallas Cowboys have standards. Those guys aren't idiots. Despite what the grandma watching the Cowboy game believes, or the dude who's never coached a day in his life.
Yep.
Much less at the NFL level. I promise you those cats know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
I promise you there are standards. Now, there are varying degrees. There's levels to everything, right? There's varying degrees. But I promise you the Cowboys, they have standards. They probably do a better job of coaching than we give them credit for. Okay? And listen, I'm a Jerry Jones fan. I'm a Jimmy Johnson fan. I'm a Cowboys fan. Anybody, a McCarthy fan, I'm a fan. The dude's coaching the Dallas Cowboys, so I'm a fan, right? Is he the best coach in the NFL? I don't know. Who's the best coach? Who knows? But here's what I know. They have standards. They do things at a professional level. What they don't have is the X factor. So when you hear X factor, what do you think of?
The intangible.
Yeah, the intangible thing that allows somebody to win. The X factor, man. You know what the name of my first jiu-jitsu academy was?
What?
X Factor MMA. And that's why, because I understand what that is, man. Like, I know what the X factor is. And I ain't going to tell everybody because there ain't nobody paying me. But I know what the X factor is. I know what it takes to win. That's why we got world champions at the gym. We got Pan American champions at the gym. I've won at different levels. My kids have won at different levels. Teams I've coached have won at different levels. There's an X factor. The Cowboys had the X factors in the 90s and the 70s. Not so much in the 70s. They were close. But the Cowboys had the X factors in the 90s. They didn't intentionally create it because they didn't know what it is. Jimmy Johnson is a great coach, and he was able to create the X factor without really even understanding what he was doing, right?
Okay.
The Patriots had the X factor for a while, right? The Steelers
it's Tom Brady.
Well, I mean, it can be a player. It's usually not. It's usually not one particular player. Because there's a parity of talent in the NFL.
Right.
Every NFL team has the same talent. I'm telling you, man. Stick with us because this is not just an NFL discussion. But every team has the same talent. But not every team has the X factor. They don't know how to get the X factor. I know how to get it. I know how to give them the X factor. If I could get in front of Jerry Jones, I could explain to him how to give his team the X factor. How to teach his teams how to win, man, instead of choke. And what happens in the NFL and every other sport is that teams accidentally come upon the X factor within their team. And they're able to maintain it for a little while, but then like we were talking about earlier, they get bored or something changes or somebody argues about they cannot recreate it consistently. Because
they didn't actually know what it was.
They didn't know what it was to begin with. They just think, well, we
it.
got Michael Jordan. He's the X factor. Which he was the X factor. But you can't recreate Michael Jordan. We've got, but even then, there were other teams when Michael Jordan was playing. There were other teams that had enough talent to beat him. Yes, and so that is like the thing that I am probably one of the things that I'm passionate about is teaching people how to do that. And look, and I'm working that plan to get to the Cowboys. But if you're out there and you have an audience with Jerry Jones and you can get me in front of him and you love the Cowboys, or you just maybe just
we
love
might be
me,
able to make that happen.
Hey, I'm telling you, bro. Like,
I'm willing to make that phone call because there's a couple
of connections.
I got a few people
Here's
I know
what
that played for the man that might be able.
Here's what I can tell you: Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl. The only thing that would shut it down is them being human and getting bored with the process that keeps producing Super Bowls. That's the only thing, man. It doesn't matter who's playing quarterback. Crazy as that sounds. It doesn't matter who's playing. There are enough good quarterbacks out there.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who's playing outside linebacker. You know what I mean? But anyway, so that's one of the things I'm passionate about, man. I just like winning. I like winning better than I like a lot of things, you know. And then the other thing that I'm passionate about is helping these, jiu-jitsu, the academy, our academy, right? I'm passionate about doing everything I can through jiu-jitsu, through our just relationships.
Yeah.
Helping our guys, our students at the place conquer life, really. The kids, man, we have so many kids. I wish I could make it mandatory, right? That kids had to come and train with us. But that's one of the things I'm passionate about. Those are a couple of the things, you know.
Yeah, my first experience rolling the mats, thanks to my older brother, was not that fun. I didn't really enjoy that a whole lot, but
most places don't do it.
He did me right, but like I was extremely out of shape. By the time I got done doing the warm up, I thought I was going to die. I'd gone and done a workout with my training partner at the time at the gym. I did buys and tries, and then at 5 a.m. and then went to the 6:30 a.m. class with all the badasses that wanted to be in the MMA world.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good a shape you're in.
And Brazilians like to have it like 100 degrees while they're rolling.
We don't do that, man. We
so like it was hot. I didn't even know what I was supposed to wear under my gi. Like, do you wear stuff under your gi? Do you just wear your underwear? Do you wear shorts and a t-shirt?
Right.
I had underwear, shorts, a t-shirt, my gi on. I get done doing the warm up. I was about to pass out.
Right.
I thought I was gonna die.
Right.
I mean, like,
cool.
It was brutal.
Yeah.
But like, might have to do this. Like maybe on the side, like I just won't tell my brother, even though he's listening. You know, like
where does he train?
He owns SIA Academy.
Your brother owns us. Yeah, man. Like, they have a great school.
Yeah, they do. Academy. They have a great anti-bully program. All this stuff, man. It's a great place. I'm not comparing. We're not like doing any of that. But like, hey,
listen. I recommend jiu-jitsu across the board.
Yeah.
And this is hang with us if you're not a jiu-jitsu person, because I'm telling you, even a bad jiu-jitsu school will still change your life. It will still change your life. Now, SIA is a great school. It's a great school. But even a bad one, even if they do everything wrong, it can still, if you just suck it up and don't quit, it'll change your life, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, man, like we totally, we do everything we can. So when I started training, it was a fight. It was a grinder, man. It was old school Hells and Gracie jiu-jitsu. Like if you weren't a fighter, you didn't stick. Like for every, I wish I had the numbers. I bet every 100 guys that tried it, I'll bet you 90 quit, because it was learn 3 techniques and fight.
Probably why you related to it. I mean, it was a lot like SEAL teams coming out of SEAL teams. It's like,
I just, for me and my buddies that trained, like we were fighters anyway. You know what I mean? But the problem with that is you miss out on influencing a lot of people. You miss out on giving the gift to a lot of people. So at our place, we try to work people in. They don't need to fight right off the bat. We want them to learn some stuff. But I'll tell you, there was a funny story, man. I was going to say, but anyway, let's go. Let's keep going, man. All
right. How would you compare jiu-jitsu to Krav Maga? That's a question that came in from one of the listeners.
Man,
I've watched Krav Maga, and that just seems insane to me.
There are people out there that are laughing right now because they asked me that. Who asked the question? Who was
Let's see. Aaron Barnes.
Aaron Barnes. Okay, I know Aaron. So here's the deal. People get emotionally attached to things, especially the martial arts, okay? And I'll just say this. This is without, because we could talk about that forever. It would bore people. But here's what I can tell you. I can send some of my guys who are not the best guys at my academy. I can send some of them into any Krav Maga. And Aaron, by the way, I asked this question of a buddy of mine who was at SEAL Team 6 at the time. When I was going to train a bunch of Green Berets, they were about to deploy. And I was going to go work on some of the hand-to-hand stuff and some other stuff. And so I reached out to a buddy of mine who was very, very current. He was the most respected guy at SEAL Team 6 at the time. And I asked him about Krav, right? And his comments echoed mine, right? But here's the thing. I can send dudes from my academy who are not some of the very best guys.
Right.
To any Krav school on earth and go, hey, who's your best Krav guy here? The best Krav school, the best Krav guy on earth who doesn't know jiu-jitsu. If he's a Krav guy and he knows jiu-jitsu, then it's a moot point because his jiu-jitsu is what's going to save his life.
Yeah.
But if he only knows Krav, and by the way, anybody's welcome to come to my place to test this out. If he only knows Krav, some of my guys who are not the best will go and destroy the best Krav guy on earth. The flip side is the best Krav guy on earth can't come to my place and whip hardly anybody unless he's got jiu-jitsu. Now, the thing where it starts getting blurred is some of the Krav schools have started also training in jiu-jitsu because they understand they have to know jiu-jitsu. And now hear me. I'm not saying that Krav is not valuable. Krav Maga is valuable if you launch the attack first. If you and I are here and I say something bad to you that you don't like and you attack me with Krav and I allow you to attack me with some of the techniques, it can be effective. But if I don't allow you to attack me with it, bro, you ain't never using Krav on me. Like, it just ain't happening.
Yeah.
If we back up and go, let's get it on, you ain't. Unless you have better jiu-jitsu than you ain't whipping me. And that doesn't matter if you're Tyson Fury, the best boxer on earth, or if you're the best kung fu guy on earth. It just is what it is, you know?
Yeah.
And so, now, here's what else I'll say. If you're not going to do anything, Krav's better than not doing anything. Train, and I'm not a Krav Maga dissident. Just like I'm a boxer, man. I would say the same thing about boxing. I'm a boxer. I'm a fighter. I'm a boxer. Like, the only reason I didn't become the heavyweight champion of the world is because I wasn't particularly fond of brain damage. And there ain't no way to become one without the other. You know what I mean? Right. So, anyway, does that answer your question, Aaron?
Yeah, no, it answers it perfectly. I mean, I think it's funny. You see, most of the guys that I know that went special forces, any guy that went special forces had a jiu-jitsu or a wrestling background.
Yeah, wrestling.
9 times out of 10. Yeah. I mean, and that's across all branches. Guys I went to high school were Army Rangers, Delta Force, Marine Recon, SEALs, whichever lane you want to go down. Right. A common denominator is these guys either swam, wrestled, or were in jiu-jitsu. Yeah. I mean, to some degree. Yeah. I mean, they may have not been, like you said, the best guy in your school, but they had that little bit of background in that. Like, it seems to be something that all of them gradually, like you said, you guys couldn't sell this to the teams 30 years ago. Right. And now it's like, you want to come in here? Like, you don't know any of this? Like, all right, well, guess what? Your next 3 months is going to be hell because we're going to break you in through
And jiu-jitsu. Here's what else you're starting to see, man. And this is something I've been preaching forever. And I'm still preaching. I'm talking about it. And this is a whole nother conversation, but I'll just say this. To be the best in the future, to be the best NFL player, to be the best NBA player, to be the best NHL player, to be the best Major League Baseball player, to be the best actor in Hollywood, you're going to have to know jiu-jitsu. That's crazy talk. Except for, what are you starting to see all the guys in Hollywood do? Yeah. Jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, name them.
I've worked with actors. They're like, bro, like, can you come teach? I'm like, yeah, I'll teach you jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Like, but it's starting to get out. And why is that? Because nothing else, and this is a whole different shift. This is a whole different thing. But and you can talk to neuroscientists. Neuroscientists are going to start espousing this as well. They already kind of have. But jiu-jitsu is one of those things that it works on problem solving under extreme duress, which directly affects the neuroplasticity of your brain, which, like we talked about earlier, is the learnability. So the better, the more neuroplastic your brain is, which is developing and creating new and strengthening new neural pathways in your brain, makes you better at everything. Whether you're an actor, an athlete, a scientist, a coach, a freaking, GC, whatever it is. You know what I mean? And you're starting to see, man, Tom Hardy, Keanu Reed, like all these guys, man, the guys that you mark my words, The Rock is going to be doing jiu-jitsu before long.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I believe it. I mean, well, let's dive down the movie path a little bit. I mean, you just had a movie come out that you're in and you helped work with a lot. Tell everybody about that a little bit.
So, that was one of the things I wanted to do. I've wanted to do my whole life.
Because you're a movie buff from what I understand.
I am a movie buff, man. I am a movie buff. I was, I've got a very vivid imagination, man. I used to play with little action figures but I'm a movie guy. I love the movies. And my plan back in high school, bro, was to play pro ball, retire from pro ball, and make movies. That was my plan. People laughed at it. Scott, you're in Wiley, Texas, man. You ain't never going to be in a movie. Like, literally told me that stuff. Which, by the way, talking about unrealistic goals, there were dudes out there that told me I'd never be in the SEAL teams because I wasn't a very good swimmer. Which, they were right. I wasn't a very good swimmer. But I didn't give a crap. You know what I mean? I knew I could do it.
Good swimmer now.
Well, still probably. Hey, here's the thing. Talking about those unrealistic goals, I'm like at the best I was at as a swimmer, I was still probably worse than most kids on a high school swimming team. You know what I mean? Like I literally was. But anyway, but the movies. So, man. Like I knew it was going to happen. And God made some connections, and I was very, very I'll put it like this. I was very fortunate to connect with a guy named William Kaufman, Mr. Kaufman. He is probably, I'll say, the best independent action/drama filmmaker out there. He's incredible.
All right.
And his crew that he rolls with, Isaac and Andrew, and some other guys, they're phenomenal, man. Like, they're phenomenal. And so I connected with him, and that was, again, a God thing, but it was also kind of a predestined, it was going to happen. So I connected with him. And he's a great friend of mine now. And, man, he's one of those guys. He was also a vet. He was in the Army. And so he understands. So he's had some great movies, man. And so he values authenticity on the set, right? And so that's where the connection made. And so he and I, we worked together on a movie called Warhorse 1, which was actually about a SEAL rescue mission over in Afghanistan that went wrong. And this was during COVID, so it was like a guerrilla movie. But it's out there, and if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. But then we he got me on the set of another one called The Channel, which is I'm super proud of. And he gave me, I kid him all the time, right? Like, because I should have had director credits because, man, I was able to direct a lot but it's because of him. I mean, he just allowed me a lot of freedom and flexibility to move these guys in the right places, and worked with incredible actors, Max Martini, Clayne Crawford, Jaron Douglas, Ed Spila, a bunch of other guys, Todd, man, his last name's just golly, Todd. I'm sorry, Todd. I've had, some whiskey and whatever.
Yeah, it's my fault, Todd.
But Danny, some of these dudes are just freaking phenomenal. Lens Edwards was one of the main guys. And a lot of these dudes are big time actors, right?
Yeah.
And so I was able to go out there and work with those guys on their gun handling and stuff. And they were studs to begin with, man. Like, Clane was on that old series, The Unit. I'm not Clane, Max. Max Martini was on that old series, The Unit, about Delta. He played Mac. He was the young redheaded guy on that. He's a stud. And Clane was in the Lethal Weapon series, and these dudes, and Lenz has been in a bunch of stuff, and Lobo was in it as well. And anyway, so I got to go out and work with them on the range and in CQB and stuff, and then I got some screen time as well. Should have been more, will be more in the future. The plan is, but
that's cool,
man. It was just, but back to Mr. Kaufman, there are so many things, and we could probably do a whole episode on just movies, man, but, there's so many things. The goal was to make it authentic and believable, right? But it's not a documentary.
Yeah.
It's a movie.
Yeah.
And I grew up in that, we
got a little Rambo in there.
So, but those dudes were awesome. The movie's great. It's rated R with a hard R, it's not a kid movie. But, it was the second of many, hopefully, to come. And,
awesome,
and the goal, man, I'm just going to straight up, the goal is to get in front of the camera more, hopefully to be the lead eventually. And
I think you have a good future there, man.
Well, hey,
you're doing real good today.
It's a blessing. And here's the thing, man. There's some great movies out there. And Will and Mr. Kaufman and I, we talk about this a lot. There's some great, which, by the way, his son works at my academy. His son's one of my purple belts. He's a killer, dude. He's 20 years old. Just turned 20. He's an assassin. He's done some stunt work in some of them, Max. But here's the thing. There's still some things that have yet to be done as well as they can be done in some of these action movies, man. When you combine the drama, the action, and the humor, and the character development.
Yeah.
And but even The Channel, this last movie was The Channel.
Yeah.
It's about a bank robbery that goes south in the Channel district in New Orleans, which is like an Irish neighborhood or whatever. Yeah. And man, the gunfight scenes were awesome. And there's a story behind it, like it's a legit, real. It's not just an action movie.
Yeah.
Like there's a great drama behind it, and those guys were awesome. I'm still in contact with a bunch of them, but yeah, man. And actually, one of the dudes, I'm not going to tell you which one because I don't know how much he wants out there, but he's actually in the Booze Fighters MC. So like he and I, like we were going to the range doing a lot of this training, and then it came out we were both in MCs. Motorcycle clubs, and so there was an immediate connection there as well. So
awesome. I'm going to dive into that quickly here in a minute, but there's something else I want to ask you that I think ties a lot of what you said together. What does a day in Scott Phillips' life look like? I mean, and when I say this, are you a guy that like journals and writes? Are you a guy that puts the Post-it notes on your mirror and sets these goals, and you have these little goals that you pull the Post-it note when you accomplish that goal off your mirror? What does that look for? How do you look at life on a day-to-day basis?
A perfect day for me, man, and I don't hit this every day.
Yeah.
I don't hit the mark every day, but a perfect day for me would be to get up and get in God's Word. Like, if somebody asked me what's the most important thing to you, I would tell you my relationship with Jesus. So if that's the most important thing to me, that's the first thing I got to take care of in the day. Like, I can't tell you Jesus is the most important thing to me if I relegate him to right before I go to bed.
Yeah.
Like, that's crap. People that say that, you're fooling yourself. You're fooling yourself, man. If Jesus is the most important thing in your life, if God's the most important thing, that's the thing you take care of first. If you say, I can't get up early enough, well, suck it up, buttercup, and get up earlier. Get up 30 minutes earlier. have some spiritual discipline. So a perfect day for me is to get up, and like I said, I don't hit that every day, but I want to get up and I want to spend some time in God's Word. Typically, whatever day of the week it is, I spend in that chapter of Proverbs. Right, there's 31 chapters in Proverbs. Today's the 12th. 12th. So I look at Proverbs 12. I read Proverbs 12. Short. Proverbs is a wisdom book, and whether you believe in God or not, if you do what's in that book, your life will be better. So I look at Proverbs 12, and then I'll flip to the New Testament or whatever. I'll study God's Word for a little bit. Then I'll spend some time praying. And then after that, because I want to hear from God before I want to hear from man. So I'll do that. And then I have Post-it notes, but it's not goals. It's nonsense that order more gis, do this, do that. You know what I mean?
Task oriented.
Task, yeah. So, and I'm not really very good at that. But, so I'll do that. And then, man, if I have, depending on the day, I'll study some jiu-jitsu. When I played ball, I studied football.
Right.
I study the greats in jiu-jitsu, man. I study Hodger Gracie, Gordon Ryan, some of the greats, right? I study their game. I study their competition film. I study jiu-jitsu because then I got to go teach it. Helson, I study Helson's jiu-jitsu. I review his jiu-jitsu. I go teach classes, come back, take care of business in the afternoon, whatever. I teach in the evenings, right? So it's martial arts school. Before I start getting into jiu-jitsu, I get into like the self-development, the personal development stuff, right? Like I have literally almost scripts that I'll read to myself, that I'll use auto-suggestion, man, to talk myself into being great. If you've never read the book, Think and Grow Rich, read it. Thank me later.
It's an excellent book.
Yeah, it's an excellent book, but you got to put it into action.
Yeah.
You can't just read it and talk about it. You got to put it into action. So I'll do that. And then, man, I'll fart around in the afternoon, try to chill a little bit, and then go to the academy and start teaching jiu-jitsu. And then, I'll come in, and I'm a movie guy, and I'll come in, and I'll stay up way too late watching nonsense, whether it's movies or series or whatever, and I'll fall asleep on the couch, man, and I'll get up and watch and repeat, And then anytime I have the chance, I'm on my motorcycle, riding my motorcycle, hanging out with my club, And understand, all my sons are now grown and they're in college or they're working.
Right.
So if they were still at the house, I would spend a lot of time with them. But man, I'm on the bike riding and doing the motorcycle club thing.
All right, let's touch on that while we wrap this up, because I know you wanted to touch on this. They call you Christian Chingon. So tell us a little bit about that. Tell us what the club means to you and what that's added to your life and why you're passionate about being involved in the club. Because obviously you're dedicating, you just said, I do these things, this is my daily routine, but then my free time, it goes to the club. So that's obviously something you're very passionate about, and there's a purpose that serves in your life.
Yeah, so the club is called Christians MC, the Christians Motorcycle Club. That's a God thing. He reserved that name for us, and that's a whole different story. But the bottom line is we're not a ministry, right? We're not out there intentionally ministering to people. We're a motorcycle club. We ride our motorcycles. We have fun. I would like to say everybody in the club's a Christian, but man, everybody in church are not Christians. The majority of the dudes in the club, I think, are 100% Christians. That's where the name came from. When we first started it, the dudes in the club, we're an outlaw club, which means we do what we want to do. We ride where we want to go. We don't conform to society's laws, to society's norms. We pretty much obey the law. Pretty much. But we're not criminals. We're not out breaking. We're not out selling dope. doing a lot of, like we're not out breaking the law. We're not criminals. The outlaw motorcycle world is really more about not doing things according to society's rules. You know what I mean? The way we dress, the way we act, and it's really more, but you can research it yourself, but yourselves, more to the point was back in the Outlaw Motorcycle Club terminology came from back when the American Motorcycle Association said, if you're going to be in a club, you got to do things these ways. And a group of clubs said, we ain't doing things that way. You know what I mean? And it was revolving all around racing motorcycles. And so that's where the term outlaw clubs come from. Right?
Okay.
Nowadays, it's more about how we ride, how aggressive we are when we ride, the code we live by, which is really more based on the old school chivalry, really. I mean, without a whole episode just dedicated to that, it's really about chivalry. And so, anyway, our club, man, we disciple each other. We try to make each other better men. We ride hard. We ride fast. We're rough dudes. We're not like your typical Sunday school guys. If you get on the internet and if you get on TikTok and Google's Christians Motorcycle Club, you'll see our guys doing some of the most nonsensical stuff, like hazing each other and just crazy stuff. But we ride knuckle to knuckle, side by side, 90 miles an hour down the highway, man. And it's aggressive and it's dangerous. And there's a sense of danger in it. You know what I mean? And we love each other. Somebody could call me in the middle of the night, 3:00 in the morning. I'm not asking questions. I'm showing up to help them. It's a brotherhood. Ours is really a brotherhood. It really is. And so I'm pretty passionate about it. We've grown a lot. And it's made up of good dudes, man. Rough guys that are struggle. We got dudes that are former felons. We got guys that are former alcoholics, drug addicts, choir boys. You know what I mean? That they're looking for this. They were looking for an outlet to be who they really felt like God wanted them to be. You know what I mean? And my opinion is, if you look at the men in the Bible, they look a lot more like us than they do the dudes, most people at church. If you look at Jesus and the guys, if you look at the disciples, those dudes were rough dudes, man. They weren't the guys that have never been in a fight in their life. They weren't the guys that have never cussed. They weren't the guys that have never, looked at another dude and slapped him. That's not who Peter and Paul and freaking John and Jacob, or not Jacob, but all those James and all those guys were. Those were rough dudes. Modern Christianity doesn't really want to accept that, but that's who they were, man. And our club is way more like that than probably most dudes serving in churches, places. We try to make each other better, you know what I mean? And I could show you threads where our guys are praying for each other. We've got some Bible studies. We're doing all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, man, we're freaking rough guys. You know what I mean? So that's the club. That's the club.
All right. Fair enough.
Some people love us. Some people hate us.
What's something you think that's common sense that everyone gets wrong? God made men and women. He made two sexes. It's pretty common sense, bro. Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more.
Anything else is mental illness. That's common sense.
Yeah.
And people that are afraid to say that are foolish. They're not insensitive. People that go, bro, if you're a dude that thinks you need to be a chick, you got mental illness. We need to address that. I don't have to live a lie because you're living a lie. Bro.
Yeah.
God made man and female, male and female. That's common sense.
Absolutely.
And the farther we get away from that, and that's not a hill that a lot of people want to die on. But bro, that's common sense. I don't know anything else on earth that's more common sense than if you can't procreate with with the sex you want to be with, then you're wrong. So,
all right. Well, you've answered already earlier one of the questions I was going to ask you that we normally end the show with, and I don't feel like you could give a better answer. So I'm going to ask you something totally different. I've not asked this before. Legacy. What do you want to be remembered for when your time comes?
Man, a man of character is probably the best, I mean, that's probably the wisest answer I can give you. A man of character. People aren't going to remember what I left behind other than my reputation. And the guy that I think the more and more times people spend around me, I think they know who I am, man. And
yeah.
I want to be a high character guy.
I think you're definitely that, because that's all I've ever heard about you for 20 plus something years. Man, I think you're steadily headed down that path. If that's your goal, then man, I think you are nailing that one out of the park.
I'm not perfect, man. I'm not perfect. I made a bunch of mistakes. I probably make a bunch of mistakes, but I like my road name Chingon, and I want to be remembered as a man of high character.
Absolutely.
So
appreciate that, man. That's good. That's good shit right there. All right, we're gonna wrap this up. This is the question we ask everybody. So, show's called Common Sense. I already asked you a common sense question, or several, but maybe I haven't asked you something. Maybe there's something else you wanted to talk about tonight. I have no idea. But give the common sense listeners your 2 cents on common sense.
Man, I'll tell you
anything.
Yeah, I'll tell you this, right? I tell people all the time, if somebody talks to me, there's probably 5 or 6 or 7 things we're going to talk about: motorcycles, guns, shooting, fighting, sports, my kids, and Jesus. And I'll just tell you this: you don't have to like it, you don't have to agree with me. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, there really is one true God in heaven, and his son really was Jesus. And if you don't have a relationship with him, one day the Bible says every knee shall bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord. And that's a fact. And I could go on and on and on about how I know that to be true, but the bottom line is that's true. And so from what's going on in the Middle East to what's going on in your life today, man, the sooner you get on board with Jesus and accept him as your Lord and Savior. And if you have any questions about that, you can talk to me. But at the end of the day, all the stuff we've talked about, man, I love talking about all of it. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing, and that's the bottom line.
Awesome, man. Well, I want to thank you, man. This has been a pleasure to sit down with you and finally get to know you one-on-one, man. Like, I've enjoyed the shit out of this show, man.
Me too.
It's been a lot of fun. Glad we finally got to meet. I don't just have to hear about the myth, the legend that is Scott Phillips of Wiley.
Now you know it's not all real, right?
I mean, you've lived up to pretty much most of the stories I've heard.
Thank you.
I mean, by all means, man. And I really enjoy this. I hope the listeners got some good nuggets out of this. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. We're going to be off air next week because I'm out of town. One of those few weeks out of the year. But we'll be back the following week for another great episode for you guys. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. If you have comments and suggestions, please send them our way. Don't be scared to DM me and tell me what you think about the show. If there's something you feel we could be doing better, something else you'd like, a guest you'd like to see, I mean, he is the #1 most requested guest we've had since I said I was going to do a podcast. So as you see, I'll try my best to get you what you guys want. So, you know, throw that out there. Give us some feedback. We're going to be changing some things up. You guys saw we're back on Facebook and YouTube. Facebook apparently was not the greatest today, but Rumble, the quality was terrible. We're still going to post on Rumble. That'll be there. You guys will still see it on all the channels you normally get to see it on. But we are going to change some things up over the next 30, 45 days. So if you guys have suggestions, comments, or if you like the show, please give us a like, a share. Share it with somebody else that you guys think would gain from listening to these conversations, because that's why we do it. I started having these conversations with very unique, awesome individuals, and I thought that that was a waste to not have that shared with all of you. So that's why I do what I do on this show. So until next time, y'all have a great time. Be safe out there.
Adios.